So, I think what we are going to discuss today, and like the former sessions, I would like to invite you to put any thoughts, any questions in the Slido, because we need your participation in order to take out myths about probably cruise. We're going to, let's say, hear a lot, I think, about this part of the chain. Then how the role of ports are played in this game, because it is a very complicated sometimes game that we have to deal with, and how sustainability under actually GSTC criteria about destinations can be a solution, a tool, and management tool. We're going to see about that today. So let me start. I'm going to make a very small introduction about what we are going to discuss today. However, I think the core of knowledge is together with the presentation from our panelists. So I'm going to be very fast. So let me, yes, it works. I'm sure that Martin is going to say more about the status of cruise industry right now. This is the latest report that most probably you are going to say a lot about. I have put in any link, in any actually reference, the link that you would like to make the QR and download. So this is the state of, let's say, cruise industry 2023 by the report by CLIA. So I have to take out my glasses. So the interesting thing is that in the last years, cruise industry is really turning to a more sustainable product. And I'm starting from that because it's really interesting to hear what exactly it's about and how this affects really a destination that has actually a specific tourist product I would like to develop, to go further, to connect all these actually visitors for cruise via the port to the destination, how this can be connected, interact, support the destination. That's another thing, very important. Of course, we would like to see also what CLIA is saying about responsible tourism and most probably the target towards fit to 55, which is also something very important for cruise industry. All right. However, it is a very complicated matter because, like you are going to see from the speech from Mr. Papadakis, it is technology driven also. How actually the emissions and the whole footprint of cruise in a destination can be related. And of course, the model is there. We're going to discuss more about. Please ask questions about the model, about the management model. However, we have to say that GSTC is working a lot with cruise in the last years, not only directly with CLIA, which we have done a lot of work, especially on applying GSTC Destination Criteria for assessments in different areas in the world, specifically in Dubrovnik and Heraklion. So this is a very good, it's not by chance the selection of the panelists, as you can imagine. However, it is a unique opportunity to share actually experiences about applying the GSTC destination criteria in destinations that have cruise and ports, of course ports, and all these activities. So you can see some, let's say, starting points about this discussion from our CEO, Rand Durban, about this kind of engagement. However, we have more actually collaboration related with CLIA and members of CLIA, like Royal Caribbean or MSC, about how they would like to have the onshore packages that they are offering to their clients. They should be certified actually by certification bodies that are inside the ecosystem of GSTC. So it's a very interesting model that really up running. And let me go to the next slide, because I think also it's a very interesting slide as giving let's say, the image of a report that has taken almost 2 years to be developed by the European Commission together with Deloitte Rumble, again with a big number of representative stakeholders of this actually ecosystem. It is a very interesting report. If someone would like to know more about, please download that, it's very important. Some of the most, I think, critical outcome of this sustainable eco-cruising tourism, it's cruising tourism, is that, first of all, the whole market that we're discussing now as an income to the destination is really, let's say, resilient. However, this growth is going to be higher and higher, so we have to see how this can be handled by the destinations. And also the biggest challenges are, first of all, destination management, so you can imagine how this interaction can be. Environmental and social challenges are also very important. And as you can imagine, this is highlighting more or less what we're discussing all these days about criteria and many other things. This is, I think, a very representative diagram, how this actually ecosystem is built around what we're discussing today. So you see the cruise lines, you see the ports, you see the destination activities, you see citizens, hotels, accommodation sites, everything. And in the middle, there is this destination management organization. So the management item, which is very, very important. All right? This is also more complicated. This is from the report itself, all right? So someone can see. This is the certification and eco-labels approach about these ports, green ports, and everything which is related with that. So you can see at least waste safety. I cannot see the other one, which is, air emissions, of course. So you see all these interconnections between. So you can imagine how complicated is the system, because in reality we have to map all these, let's say, activities. Some of them are already in this discussion about certification. There's an excellent example by Eco-Cruising, Intercruising, which is a certified organization offering actually packages about the land related with cruise industry, which also have certified the packages following GSTC criteria and many other things that are going to come in the near future. So I think this is a very complicated, at least system that we have to discuss about. I'm going to close this small, let's say, presentation for myself, giving another part of this report, because it's very important that European Commission, based on this report, in reality, accepted the use of GSTC Destination Criteria as a very important tool to assess ports. So in this report, you can see also this tool to be applied in, I think, 21 ports around the globe, from Miami to Lisbon and many others. And they are using, in reality, in this report, this system of making a kind of scoring based on the criteria implementation. It's very, very interesting. What are the outcomes? Some of the outcomes are the good practices, the good examples that someone can see, and I think this could be and should be and will be items of our discussion. So first of all, the onshore power supply. Mr. Papadakis is going to say something about the example of Heraklion, cold houring you are going to see, environmental SIP index and many other things that are related with berth allocation module and everything, sustainable cruise terminal in Estonia, holistic approach to tourism in Dubrovnik, so here it is, and waste reduction program related with food. So these are 5 good practices that this report have, let's say, taken as an outcome from all these jobs. So 1 second, I'm good. So this was my introduction to the subject. I hope that I create a first, let's say, boom to your mind. You can start asking already questions. So let's go to our first panelist in order to have a presentation of 8 minutes around, in order to have an introduction to the subject. So Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Johannes. And thank you for using the state of the cruise industry. You've probably used half of my slides already, which will speed up my presentation very much. Thank you very much for inviting us here, and we're very proud to be part of this event. We're quite different to most of the GSTC partners that you've probably experienced, who are land-based and hotel-based, and we're quite different. We're based in the sea. Most people don't see us most of the time because we're out in deep waters. But we're living in a rapidly changing world, and the pandemic brought that home more than anything. We had extreme growth before the pandemic, and we were getting into situations where more and more destinations were finding it troublesome that big cruise ships were coming in an uncontrolled manner. So we had to reset the whole agenda, and this morning you heard there were 4 key drivers around where the tourism sector needs to work. Water, that's a very important thing for our ships. Plastics, we've done a huge amount of work on single-use plastics and reducing plastics waste. Biodiversity, we always say if the sea is not pristine, it's not where we want to operate, so we know nobody wants to go and see a dirty sea on a cruise ship. And finally, climate change. The cruise ships, the maritime sector as a whole is one of the hardest to decarbonise sectors in the tourism sector. But we have a commitment. The IMO has a commitment to be net carbon zero by 2050. We want to do it before that. The cruise industry is working hard to do that. We're driving the way in technology, leading the maritime sector. And we've also worked very much with the destinations and the ports. The ports, nobody goes to visit the ports we arrive at, they go to visit the destinations those ports open the doors to. And we have to remember that that's the interface that we have to work with. So Johannes, this is the first slide we used. In Europe in particular, we're seeing that drive move much faster. We have 3 pillars that we're operating on. One is the technology. We have the youngest fleet of cruise ships we've ever had, with the newest technology on board. We're moving to alternative fuels, to hydrogen fuel cells, to battery packs, to shoreside electricity, which requires a huge amount of infrastructure investment. But we're also looking at changing the ways we operate, from digitalizing our operations to fuel use to itinerary planning, but also to food and our food supply chains. But what is the cruise industry doing in responsible tourism? A whole lot. Many people have heard about us moving to LNG, and it's being received quite negatively, but it's the only alternative fuel we have from a shipping perspective today, and it's really a transition. It allows us to future-proof our ships for what comes next. And that's what we're doing. We're investing heavily in all the new ships that are coming out of the shipyards in Europe with LNG technology, and it will be the first step in our decarbonisation strategy moving forward. But it will need support that LNG is available at more and more destinations, especially as we see our ships home porting in more and more destinations around the world. One of the biggest challenges the ports will receive from the cruise sector is that whilst there is a move in Europe at the moment to have zero emissions from shipping in ports by using shoreside electricity or other zero emission technology, there is no other zero emission technology today, so it's shoreside electricity or nothing. And that's fine for relatively small loads like for a cargo ship or a short distance ferry, but when you have a cruise ship arrive and it's got a hotel on that, it needs to maintain its hotel supplies, its kitchens, its laundry, its whole activities, you need a lot more electricity. And most ports don't have that capacity in their grid locally to do that, or they're in areas of pristine environmental protection like UNESCO heritage centres or areas of natural beauty, that we have to think, how do we get that electricity to those places and how do we deal with that? And that's where we're working very closely with ports, and we will continue to do that because we're committed to use it if it's available, but we need to work with the ports and destinations to ensure that. One of the things that people also forget about cruise tourism is it's actually one of the most managed parts of tourism. People arrive at a set time, at a set location, and we can manage what we do with those people to get them off the ship and to get them back on the ship. And as Johannes mentioned about Dubrovnik and the relationship we've had for a number of years, that's where we started working on sustainable tourism. We had huge problems in Dubrovnik with our cruise lines arriving in the port, putting everyone on a bus, taking everyone to the Pilar gate at the same time, dropping everyone off in front of a medieval gate that can take about 5 people at a time through it, and you have 5,000 people queuing up to go through it. Nobody is happy. So that's what we have been able to do, is we actually work with the destinations to provide solutions that manage how we deal with people when they arrive. And on top of that, we plan in advance. So most of our arrivals are known up to 3 years in advance. So destinations and people working those destinations can work with us to find solutions that help us deliver effectively. We also are seeing a change in the way we operate from a food and waste perspective. Historically, we were big American brands who shipped everything from America in cargo containers to wherever their turnaround port was, so where the people got off and got back on. That's changing. We're now trying to use much more local supplies, local food. We have a lot more experiences in local destinations to explore local cuisines. But that puts a lot more resource into the ports as well to deliver those services for us. So it's much more about an engagement. We also see more and more issues about water. And we're trying as an industry to reduce our reliance, especially on island destinations where they have limited fresh water, by either taking water from areas where there's no problem, or by actually desalinating the water on board the ship and using that as much as possible. And also recycling water from like air conditioning and other systems to be used a second time to clean the ships and different things. So reducing our impact, both on the destination and on the environment. But one of the biggest areas where we're working at the moment is where we really have to interact with destinations, and that's about the excursions we offer. When I first joined the cruise industry 7 years ago, there was a mentality: you chose a destination, you chose 5 excursions, you set them up, and they ran themselves forever and a day, you just took the money out of it. We can't do that anymore. We have to really think about the way we engage with the destinations. That's good for the people who live there, and therefore good for the people who visit there. And that's what we're trying to do now. We're working very actively with our cruise brands to actually choose sustainable excursions themselves, either by walking, cycling, paddleboarding, but also using companies that have actually been accredited as sustainable for the tours they are, moving away from diesel buses to electric buses, and trying to find ways that we can work with the destinations. And that's a big challenge, but it's a commitment we have to moving forward to be a much more sustainable and carbon neutral industry. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, if the sea is not clean and pristine, it's no good to us, because that's our natural home. So our brands are at last realizing that, and they're working. A lot of them have their own nature reserves on their private islands, but they're also doing lots of reconstruction projects around the world. In Italy, we've just done a huge coastal project where we're working to develop a whole range of different activities and work with academia and researchers to see where we can do more in that field and minimize the impact we have. We have some of the most stringent waste management policies of any of the maritime sector, so we never release any untreated water at sea. The water that we actually release from our ship is cleaner than the drinking water you probably have at home. So we really are trying very hard to do that. We have a very clean recycling stream that we work with the ports and destinations to ensure that that goes into the best way possible to reduce our impact. And then finally, as I said, the average age of a cruise ship is 14 years old today. That's the youngest it's ever been. That means it has the latest technology of any of the shipping sectors in the world. It means that we can interact with the ports much more clearly and be as sustainable as we possibly can. And for you as stakeholders, I just have one thing that we've launched since I put this presentation together, is that we have a new stakeholder engagement toolkit that's online that you can go and find a whole host of case studies and actions that can help you with your stakeholders when you go back to your own destination. And Heraklion and Dubrovnik are involved in that. It's called cruiseinfohub, all1word.com. I will leave some cards on the table outside for you to look at, and I hope we can have a good discussion moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very ambitious, actually, roadmap. We have met with some other representatives from CLIA some weeks ago in Thessaloniki, and it's really surprising in the good sense. I mean, what really this industry is doing with many members that really are very ahead of the whole market sometimes, talking about things that are way above the mean, let's say, situation that someone can see in many subsectors of tourism. So this is surprising. However, we have to discuss more about, and we're going to come back to that. I think it's better, I don't know, let's go and see the option of the destination, how all this actually programs and mirroring of the industry is dealing with. So, Helga, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's my great pleasure and honor to be here with you today, and thank you for GSTC team to invite me to actually showcase Dubrovnik, which was already mentioned throughout these two presentations before, but just short introduction. Dubrovnik is one of the most southern Croatian cities. It has very long, impressive history. From the 14th until 19th century, it existed as Dubrovnik Republic, independent state, which played a very important role in the Mediterranean of the time. It was maritime diplomatic force, and it was quite known. It's listed on UNESCO Heritage Site list since 1979, and our festivities and plays, which is also very important for us. It's our patron saint, was listed at UNESCO Intangible Heritage List back in 2009. The local government, which I present, actually started to work or to have the responsibility. We took over the responsibility for the city in June 2017, and what we were facing at that time was this. You already heard a short explanation, but these photos actually presents what we were facing when we started with the global media titles that Dubrovnik is going to die, and it's overcrowded, and it's on a blacklist, etc., etc. And it was really very tough for us to actually decide how to approach this issue and how to start to deal with this problem. And we were quite unhappy at the moment, but we didn't have any choice. We actually decided to start to work, and we started with a project called Respect the City, which was inspired by the Venice project Respect Enjoy Venice, because Venice is the sister city of Dubrovnik. And the Respect the City project, which I like to describe it as an umbrella project, is based on 4 pillars: smart, sustainable transport solutions, sustainable balanced local development, innovative destination management, and human resources development. And we got quite soon visible reduction of crowds. We now have integrated destination management. We do have a more effective public-private partnership, but our strongest tool is great communication, coordination, and cooperation among all our stakeholders, and 2 goals which we have. First goal is to have happy residents, and second goal to have better quality for our visitors. So at the end of the day, it's more sustainable part of development for tourism. Since the focus today is on cruise, on this graph you can show actually how our figures will look like, or how they are going to look like this year. In 2013, we had almost 1 million cruise visitors, but it was not problem, because the figure is never the problem, the number is not the problem, the flow is the problem. But we had back then a concentration on few days with lots of cruise ships at the same time, like 6, 7, even 8. But when we started to deal with that problem, why the cruise? First of all, I have to say, Martin mentioned that cruise business is quite transparent. They have their itineraries 3 years in advance. You know very well enough earlier how many ships are going to call your destination, and always the perception of the residents is concentrated on the negative aspect of cruise ship in the harbor. If there are too many, then of course even higher negative perspective, but we never had such problems as in Venice with demonstrations, etc. But we did have some issues with our residents, and we wanted them to be happy, because happy residents is what every local government needs to have. Although the biggest driver for you to work and move forward is again the citizen, and when they are unhappy. But we did have a great cooperation with port authorities of Dubrovnik. We started with traffic coordination, with coordination and reduction of number of cruise ships at the same time in Dubrovnik, with berthing policies with very firm rules, with some new shuttle service models which we introduced last year, and our new project is to build the new cruise terminals, which will give us the opportunity to have home ports, more home port operations. We started with CLIA because we contacted CLIA as the representative of major cruise lines in summer of 2017, and they accepted Dubrovnik as a partner, and throughout that partnership we performed great activities. One of them is, of course, the GSTC assessment, because it's based on our Memorandum of Understanding, which was signed back in 2019. We all actually have a small group of like a coordination body between CLIA and City of Dubrovnik, and we are dealing with different issues, and we are actually on constant communication and to start to work better both for benefit of cruise lines and of citizens of Dubrovnik. GSTC performed the assessment, started in 2019 and finished in spring of 2020 in the very beginning of COVID crisis. And nowadays we are in the process of it's a second step, it's a second phase of GSTC assessment, and I have to say that I'm very proud because of that. Also, throughout all these Respect the City programs, we were one of the first cities in Croatia to have smart city strategy, and based on that strategy we developed several tools like Dubrovnik visitors application, which was actually recently analyzed by the University of Dubrovnik, and then I'll show you later some results. A bus web shop, which is very important for us because buses do need to have pre-booked slots on our pillar gate, the main entrance. We have some car sharing and scooter sharing, web cameras on city roads, and the smart parking app, which is for our citizens' use, and Dubrovnik Eye also service for our citizens, etc., etc. And results, as I've told you, first of all, 70% of excellence by GSTC assessment. We got that scientific analysis of our app, Dubrovnik Visitor, which is actually people counter. We have every moment in real time number of visitors within the zone, and the results is saying that we have different flow. So basically we don't have too many people in the morning or in certain days of the week or the month, but we have yearly differentiation between some months, some weeks, some times of the day, and that's very optimistic, and it shows that it's really about the flow, not about the number. And what we are expecting next is the new law on traffic safety, which was amended in Croatian Parliament, and we will have the limited traffic zone, which was initiated and enabled by this law for the city of Dubrovnik as UNESCO heritage site, and we are, as is already known, one of the examples of good practice worldwide. But we are not stopping on the everyday issues. We are developing new programs. Dubrovnik 2030 is going to be urbanistically developed in different zones of the city, so basically we would like to have diversification of tourism products, but there are a lot of infrastructural projects going on in preparation. One of them is a new model of transportation in Dubrovnik, which is electric boat, and we are hoping to have that. We already have the visibility study, and we are hoping to have some new funding for that. So that's in very short what we did throughout last year. Then thank you very much again for your attention.
Thank you very much, Helga. It was really short, but I think very important findings inside. I have to admit that because Dubrovnik was a very important project for us implementing this destination assessment, because they have decided to release the whole report to the public, which is very, very interesting as a statement from the municipality part. However, it starts a legacy of destination assessment that Afterwards took the lead Heraklion and Corfu together with CLIA also as a co-financing. The case of Heraklion was very interesting also because the municipality and the port authority co-financed this approach in order to be evaluated by someone outside the system in reality. So this is also very important. So I would like to ask Mr. Papadakis, the CEO of the Port Authority of Heraklion, to have the presentation, closing in reality from cruise to destination and back to the port. So Mr. Papadakis.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ioannis, for the invitation to give me the opportunity to share some thoughts about our plans and actions in our way to the path to sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no doubt that climate crisis is the #1 challenge that humanity is facing and will be facing in the coming years. According to recent studies, the sensitivity of passengers regarding climate crisis has increased substantially, and consequently, the travelers opt for destinations that fulfill sustainability standards. 3 years ago, we invited GSTC in cooperation with the municipality of Heraklion and CLIA to assess Heraklion City and Heraklion Port in terms of sustainability. A great experience both for the port and the city. We ended up with a high score and with some very, very interesting findings and conclusions. We are now in discussions with the municipality to continue our effort, with our final target being the certification of Heraklion as a sustainable destination in a few years' time. Many thanks to Mr. Papas and his team, and Ioannis, we thank you indeed. Addressing climate crisis is the top priority of our administration at Heraklion Port. Our mission is no emissions. This is our absolute motto. We have taken a series of action in the direction of decarbonization, with our major action being the completion of studies to implement an OPS system at our port. For those who do not know it, OPS is the process of providing shoreside electrical power to a ship at berth while its main and auxiliary engines are turned off. OPS provides many social and environmental benefits. Specifically, if the technology is implemented in the right way, it can significantly improve the air quality by reducing CO2 emissions dramatically. Beyond the reduction of CO2 emissions, an OPS system also reduces the noise pollution, provides better on-board comfort, provides a green profile, and reduces life cycle costs. There are two main critical themes for the success of an OPS system. The first has to do with the mix of the energy, of the power. You have to provide green energy in order to get a green outcome. And the second one has to do with the financial viability of the project. The pricing of electricity has to be competitive in comparison with bunker fuels. So providing green electric energy at low cost is a key for a successful OPS system. Now let's focus on the case of Heraklion Port, starting with the characteristics of our port. Heraklion Port belongs to the TNT network. It is a multifunctional port with a very strong ferry sector, 1.5 million ferry passengers per year, a very strong cruise sector, and a small cargo operation for the needs of the local economy. All the above operations are translated to 8,000 tons of fuel and 22,000 of CO2 emissions per year, plus NOx, SOx, and particulates. This is an outline of the installation that we are designing. Our initial plan was to cover all the berthing positions, but due to technical and financial reasons, we decided to skip this maximalistic plan and to proceed with the lighter version. We are planning to cover 5 places for electrification, 3 for the ferry sector and 2 for large cruise ships or for cargoes. The maximum power that we can provide is 15 megawatts, and this is a restriction due to the local grid. And the total the total energy needs to cover the needs of the ferries and the cruise sector is estimated to 22.5 gigawatt hours per annum. The total amount of the investment from the side of the port is almost 20 million euros, and the cost for the ship transmission starts from 500,000 euros for the ferry ships and reaches almost 1 million for the large cruise ships. Now, with all this, what are we expecting in terms of reduction in CO2 emissions? As I mentioned before, the energy mix is very, very critical. In 2020, 77% of the electric energy produced on the island of Crete was from thermal plants. With the cable connection of Crete with the mainland grid, a project that is under construction, hopefully it will be completed by the end of the first quarter of 2024, the picture changes dramatically, and by 2028, 54% will come from renewables and 39% from the connection with the mainland Greece. This evolutionary greening process of the energy mix of Crete will bring impressive results to the efficiency of the OPS system to our port, leading to a reduction of almost 90% of the CO2 emissions by the year 2028. Really, really impressive results. Now, our second major action in our path to decarbonization is a project that is called Happiness with you. Happiness is about the use of wave energy to produce electricity. We are starting the installation of wave energy generators on the armoring of the windward breakwater to produce electric power. Almost 1 megawatt electric power can be produced by using waves, and we will use less than 1/3 of the length of our windward breakwater. This system has been implemented in a smaller scale at the port of Jaffa at Israel, so we hope to be the second port in the Mediterranean. We are also preparing a proposal for hydrogen. The main idea here is the production of hydrogen via renewables, the storage of hydrogen, and with the application of the fuel cells technology to produce electricity that will be used for the needs of the OPS system. Last but not least, we are replacing all the lighting bulbs with LED-type lights, a project that leads to a 45% reduction in energy consumption. Coming to the end, I want to close with a positive message. Climate change is a big threat for humanity, but it can also be treated as a great opportunity. A great opportunity for new jobs, new production methods, and a new way of life. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Minas. So you have seen that, let's say, the destination priorities and the port priorities, especially for the port that is really, let's say, a door for many activities like it is in Heraklion, are focusing in different paths. One is more technological, the other is more, let's say, focusing, let's say, to the local community and all this creation that should be made in order to be sent via the port to the cruise industry. So I will start with my questions that at least I would like to ask for to the panelists, but please write to Slido in order to be able to interact more. So Martin, so how optimistic you are, really? Because if it is a technological issue, I mean, to go further and, let's say, achieve these targets of, let's say, 55 or to become net zero or whatever is there, you are going to achieve always focusing on what are the needs of the destination, because at the end of the day, you have to have a dock somewhere and give some experience to the, let's say, to the visitors.
I think from the cruise sector, we're very optimistic that we're moving in the right direction. All of our cruise brands are already experimenting with low carbon fuels. There's drop-in fuels today, but they're not available at scale, so it will take us time, but that will happen. We are also committing to shoreside electricity, and ports also have that commitment in the EU legislation. So we're confident that will happen. But we want to find as much technology that we can put on the ship that puts less pressure on the destinations as well. So if we can reduce the needs in the port by having batteries or fuel cells on board the ships to run some of our operations, that will take some of the stress off the ports as well. So hopefully we can work together to find a good balance on that.
Are you working together?
We are working together, but it's always difficult because we don't make the investment decisions for the shoreside electricity, for example. That's a national policy. Under the European Union laws that are going through at the moment on the Fit for 55 package, that will be part of that work that the member states will have to do. Outside of the EU, that will be different. Of course, we have a lot of American brands that are operating in Europe, so they have a different view of the world. They are changing very quickly. That's a very big reassurance to us. It is difficult because every port is different. As Heraklion just said, they have ferries and they have cargo and they have cruise. That's a very big difference to some port like Dubrovnik that has some leisure or ferries. We have some ports like Kotor, for example, and they're in the middle of a fjord where they're not taking cargo, they're taking one cruise ship at a time, a medium-sized cruise ship. So it's very different to have one size fits all. And I think that's where GSTC has been very helpful in helping us build that relationship to show that it's not just a cruise problem, but it's a sustainable tourism problem. And if we work together, we can find solutions quicker. And we are continuing that work in other destinations now.
I am keeping this positive thinking about this kind of collaboration. I'm going to say that it was a very good experiment for us, for everyone. I think it's a successful one because it was the first time that there was a very good actually recipe of collaboration. However, I'm still looking for this collaboration, let's say, platform. Before going there, what are really your priorities related with cruise, really, as a destination? Because you are coming from the management part, which, if you remember, was in the center of this very complicated stakeholders map. So what do you think?
I think it's actually bringing together the whole stakeholder map, because what we found is that we arrived at the port and then we made contracts with third parties and they were responsible for delivering the service in the port. Then we took the passenger back on the ship and we sailed away. Those days have gone. We have to work with the destination, and Dubrovnik proved that, and I think that's why the GSTC criteria have been so successful, because we changed very simple things in the way we operated, and it made immediate differences. And we had a very good example. We put the berthing policy in place where we reduced the number of people that were allowed off the ships at any one time. It reduced the stress that Jelka showed you in her photograph. And we had, once we started it, it worked really well. And one day we had a ship that arrived early, and without thinking, they just let the passengers off the ship. And immediately the problem came back. So we could see that by very small changes in the way we operate, we can make a big difference for the destinations. And I hope that we can continue doing that in more and more destinations as we move forward.
So I'm going to Jelka to ask the same thing. However, I cannot just not see the first question about changing some attitude. So let's say some traffic related issues in a destination like Dubrovnik, which the roads are so limited around the old city. So, so what are your needs? And if it is really a solution, a simple one, I mean, there are many simple ones, so like the ones that you have done already in Dubrovnik, so tell us about.
Well, first of all, each destination is different. We are facing the same issues like we're over tourism, but what Martin said, each destination, each port is different. You have to learn what your residents aspects, because in the center of our program is the resident, at the same time tourist, but the resident in the first place, they really me neither. We didn't want to be a part of the crowds trying to enter the city. It's very plastic, but that was happening, and that's the reason why we started with all small activities, which helped us to avoid such pictures, because nowadays using cell phones, you've got those pictures everywhere. And what we were expecting when we started to deal with cruise, it's easy to deal with cruise industry because of the transparency. They were, and they still are, very cooperative, and we are great partners. And we expected to have better management of cruise ship calls, which we achieved. But firstly, we start with the reduction, and that reduction still exists. Berthing policies helps a lot, because it's very strict the way they are doing their bookings within the port authorities. The port authority board, extremely important, because they decide whether they have more or less profit, which is not to ignore. And at the end of the day, that leads us to spread the destination management, not only to manage cruise ships, but to manage traffic and flows in general, and more or less everything, because it's all connected. You cannot have only cruise tourism. You have one-day visitors, you have tourists staying in hotels and spending some days in the destination. So it's the management is a combination of activities, and it's everyday is hard work.
Yeah, I will come back to that with Minas, but later, because I would like to ask you to describe a little bit more about the Respect the City program, because I think this was the reason that you went, let's say, above a third solution. Now it's a passport, not it's the city, just Respect the City program, and you have gained more funds in order to, let's say, to put on solutions that are really interesting in your case. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, Respect the City is like an umbrella program, I told you. We started with that because firstly we wanted to do some changes, some quick changes. That was actually quick doing. For example, we cut the number of rentals for public spaces with some stands, booking stands, souvenir stands, whatever. So the flow within the old zone of Dubrovnik, which is pedestrian zone, which is narrow streets, it's medieval or very old city, and it has its limits, and we had to do something. We started with that. We started with a coordination body which has every week its meeting and coordinates all the numbers expected, meaning buses, meaning cruise ships, meaning all kinds of different visitors coming to Dubrovnik. And we do have, for example, web bus shop, which is very useful. It's an application which enables a bus or an agent to book a slot on the main entrance to the city, and it's limited time in which you have to come and go. It's 7 buses per half an hour. We stop it if we expect more buses from cruise ships. It's I don't know, it's a communal police, it's traffic police, it's all kinds of different everything.
So the traffic
really is one of the
yeah.
issues, number one, because Dubrovnik is very narrow, tiny little city, but huge tourist destination. We are, it's the way we cannot build wide streets. Maybe we can build a tunnel, and that will be that's a part of our future plans. But at the moment, we have what we have, and we have to manage the best we can. That means restrictions, regulations, and also even sometimes with residents we do have some
That's a very
issues.
critical point.
Yeah.
I mean, how on all these solutions, the residences, especially in the North City, and the overall, let's say, stakeholders, in different levels can interact with this decision making, because this is the idea. I mean, how the visitors, together with the residences and the whole policy of a city, which is not so very big, like you said. And I have many different examples I can remember from the case of the Rome, because it is published. Okay, like that if you stop in a specific area without any pre-allocation of stopping, just to left something, a suitcase or whatever, you are going to take the fine by internet. All right? So you have to pre-allocate even your stop in a specific areas where cruise, let's say, but other activities are there. So technology is really a key, all right, which is something very interesting in the case of the drone. However, in Iraklio, that's another story, because in reality you have the whole city right on the border of the port. So the whole port is the face of the city. So what is the situation over there? And okay, technology is also there as a future, let's say, tool. However, we need to see many other things that we have seen, let's say, during the assessment. So how do you see the future of this port together with the destination?
Well, I think our next step is to move from the assessment to the certification. We are in a very close cooperation with the municipality and with the area of Crete altogether. And we have to define our complete strategy, how to achieve sustainability, and I think we're close to that. We are not facing at the moment the flows is not such an issue, but it will be in the near future. The numbers are increasing, and the major problem is not the flows from the port to the city, but mostly to the attractions, like Knossos. This is where it's very, very crowded, and we have to see how we will manage the flows towards the touristic attractions.
So again, the traffic. Actually, the same thing we had in Athens, which is not the port related, but also again, the traffic is an issue to go to the specific areas, the landscapes. All right. So in the case of Iraklio, I remember that I said, okay, don't put more information in your presentation if it's possible with numbers. But there is a question over there, say about the cost of all these nice goodies. Is this kind of transformation to a more, let's say, green energy? First of all, we have to have green energy in order to plug a ship. Okay. Otherwise, what kind of plugging with a network of electricity we're going to have? However, let's say that there is assumption over there. So this financing is going to come from this kind of, let's say, technological implementation?
The OPEX or the CAPEX part of it?
Both.
Well, we have two sides.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the CAPEX, the investment, we hope that it will be subsidized by the European Union.
Okay.
And there are programs that are subsidized in nearly 85% of the construction. And we will apply for financing by the end of this year. Hopefully, if we succeed, to have the OPS working by the year 2026.
Okay.
As far as the OPEX is concerned, the truth is that nowadays the cost of electricity is almost twice the cost of bunker fueling. So somebody has to pay for the green transition. Will it be the taxpayer, or will it be the passenger with the cruise line by squeezing their profit margins? We don't know yet. We are waiting for the legislation to clear some things, and the southern countries are lagging behind the application of OPS systems because of the lack of legislation. In the north, we have many ports supplying OPS systems. But what I want to make clear today is that for Iraklio port, the application of OPS is not a profit maximizing situation. All we want is to cover our basic costs.
So Martin, who is going to pay the bill?
Well, we will pay for the electricity because we have to pay for that. It's a very complicated picture. If you look at the situation today, we're using fuels that emit carbon emissions, and we will have to pay for those emissions, and that money will be used to some of the investments that will be required for the development of alternative fuels, alternative fuel networks, and so ultimately we will pay part of that through the innovation fund. How that develops over time, how quickly we will find new fuels that decarbonise the industry, we're still struggling to see how quickly that will happen, but hopefully it will be a balance that will work in everyone's favour. It won't be something that the customer will pay 100% of, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that, and now let's go a little bit more to what actually the end users are thinking about what we are discussing here. So, and this is a question for the three of you. I mean, do you have any feedback about this kind of initiatives from the cruise industry destination and the port authority, from the travelers? I mean, what we're discussing here, and we're missing a little bit the DMCs in reality. However, let's say that we're going to hear about that there is another session about that. So, what their feedback, how they see this kind of transformation? Do they believe on that? Do they have positive, really, actually, new view about this product?
It's changing a lot. When we first started discussing climate change, all of our brands started offering offsetting, carbon offsetting, and it was really not picked up widely by the consumer at all. Whereas now the consumer is actually aware that there are issues and that they are asking what the carbon emission, what the pollution is from the ships, what they're doing and how they can abate that. So there is more drive from a consumer perspective to do it.
Is that something related also with new regulation? Do you think that we need more regulation to have this?
I think if you look at the European Union, the European wants to lead the drive to zero carbon. So the only way they can do that is by introducing legislation that can do that. That's how they operate. The IMO works in a slightly different way from the global perspective, and that will take longer. But I think it's not necessarily driven. It's driven by the desire for a region of the world to be green, as opposed to the consumer himself or herself saying, "I want my region to be green."
You know, Zerga, we have a lot of discussion many times with people saying, okay, what's a destination? It is a city, it is a country, it is a region, it is a smaller city.
Yeah.
So what about, let's say, the wellness of the present administration in Dubrovnik? What is really the things, the items, the details that makes a difference and going to that direction? What's the driving behind? What's the drive?
The driver is the happiness of our residents always. But as we are residents of some community or members of community and living in some city or neighborhood or wherever, it's in our core not to be happy. And this is something which drives the change, I believe, because people want more and want better and want more and want better again. So you never achieve that level of satisfaction which leaves you with the happiness or calm, but you're always driven by another query, another moment which is not good, but which happens because we do live in a world, and sometimes if people are not happy with waste management, they are complaining. With electricity, they are complaining, and it's something which drives you to be better and to try to fix it in a way, to make it better for your neighbors.
And this is a critical point. How much sustainability, in the sense of good practices, examples, pressure from the DMO level, let's say the management, increase this, because we don't have, I think, right now in our criteria, the happiness indicator. However, maybe that's a good idea to use.
Yeah, but
so from 0 to 10, how happy are the citizens of Dubrovnik?
From 0 to 10.
Because of all these things that we are doing. And you have to be honest.
But it's difficult to tell. Yeah, maybe you know better than me because you were the assessor. Well, I believe that people are approving what we are doing. They want Dubrovnik always to be the best or better. I'm not sure that we have enough education for all our inhabitants to learn more about actually what we are doing. And I was explaining just a while ago that maybe we are much globally known, that we are known within our own state in what we are trying to do and how to change things. But it's a difficult situation for our residents within the old zone because they are feeling the strongest pressure out of tourism. Everybody's feeling strong pressure because of the traffic, but it's also important that each one of us should maybe change their habits if they want to be to move around in a sustainable way. Let's say that's something we have to present to our residents. Maybe they can also do their part on the path of sustainability. But it's something we need to build, and we are well aware of what we are missing. And I told you, we are well aware that we are on a constant need to push and to move forward and to change.
So continuous improvement.
Continuously.
Yeah, continuous improvement is a critical
yes,
point.
that's true. Yes.
And I will ask something else to Minas, which is also very challenging. So it is public that, let's say, the authority, the Port Authority of Iraq is under privatization. So yes, so very difficult spelling in English. So tell me something. How often, or what are the chances for a private, let's say, company to follow such, let's say, really an ambitious program of going to more sustainable future? Is it an only one solution about the future? It is only related with revenues? It is something else? What's the case of Iraq, do you think?
Well, I think it depends on the investor and on the persons. But to my understanding, I think everybody has understood that sustainability and climate crisis is #1 problem for humanity and for the planet, and I think they will take the cost.
Because it is also connected with responsible investment, I suppose, and everything that is connected, all the dots around, let's say, how we can invest, how we can take out, what kind of profit, and what is the actual...
Let me say that one of the two major participants, one of the two major bidders is the Grimaldi Group, which are also investing very heavily in decarbonization of their fleet.
Yeah, because this is, Martin, this is something that you are pushing a lot, because in reality, what's going to be the 55 actually target otherwise? And how this affects really the destinations? I mean, how you are going to do that?
I think there are two things. We have to work side by side. One is we have to have quick solutions today, and then the easiest way for those in port is to use onshore power supply, OPF. But it's a huge expense, and there is probably not a capital return for that today. But I think the cruise ships will continue to use OPS even when they have cleaner fuels, if it's cheaper than the fuels that they have on board ship, which probably will be the case if we're using synthetic fuels anyway. So there is a long-term use for the OPS, we believe. It's not just a short-term gap-filling exercise. And then we have to also do the investment from our side to ensure that we move forward on the fuels that we use. And we have to admit that, we were subsidised to use some of the dirtiest fuels in the world on the shipping sector, and we're going to have to change that fundamentally. And that's going to cost a lot of money by changing the propulsion systems we use and also the technology we have on board the ship, and also buying more expensive fuels. So there's a balance between the two, but we hope that it will allow everybody to get some benefit from a cleaner planet.
And I would like to ask all of you a last question that is related of what do you think is the most challenging item of such a criteria set like GSTC Destination Criteria said? What is the most difficult one? First of all, to connect with the whole chain. Secondly, in the destination level, to connect with the stakeholders. And thirdly, to the Port Authority, because in the middle of the two things, I mean, the two entities in reality. So let's start from Martin.
I think the whole process with Dubrovnik, where our relationship with GSTC started, was the holistic approach that we had no idea what the reality was. And that opened up a whole gap in our knowledge of how destinations deal with our customers when they arrive. And that's something we're really struggling to find how we can actively bridge that gap. You know, even from waste management, public transportation, parking, a whole host of things that we've never even thought about how our customers interact with the destinations. So by having that whole holistic approach, it actually made us look much more at how we manage the destinations we visit and work with those destinations much closer. And that takes a lot of effort.
So, holistic approach, that's something that I will keep it. So, Sergio, what do you think? What is the most challenging in this journey to sustainability?
The most challenging, well, it's to have a resident happy. That's the main issue, because they recognize what we do, but still they want more. And that's something which we have to be aware of. It's public job, what we are doing, what I'm doing. But I tell you, every day we are facing some new moment and we have to deal with it. And regarding the sustainability, overall sustainability of the destination, not only throughout the assessment, we need, as I told you, more education and to raise awareness of how is that important. I'm not really sure that the population of Dubrovnik was aware of how Dubrovnik showed the power of destination, which we did, and we were like the first in showing that power, which I learned throughout this journey, throughout this last year. And maybe they find it easy, but it was not easy. It was a very demanding process, and but still we are determined to move forward in spite of everyday's problems, let's say, which we have.
And I have to say that it's very, very transparent and very encouraging that everything that we are doing is public, which is very important for a destination.
But it's our responsibility. If we were elected, which we were twice in a row, then we are supposed to work for a benefit of the citizen. That means that we have to have transparency in all what we are doing. That's one of the applications I mentioned. It's e-Dubrovnik, which actually enable each and every person living in Dubrovnik to get into all information about everything the municipality or departments are working on. Maybe we miss something, but in general we have everything online.
Okay.
Even the GSTC.
Even the GSTC.
So we feel that our transformation to a green and a smart port will help to have all the local stakeholders satisfied, and this is our goal, our target.
I need to make another question. I think I have 1 minute more or something, because we are running around a specific question which is about feedback and data mining and system, how you're taking the feedback and everything. Because in order to take this feedback and make an evaluation and come back and make a reassessment of our activities and plan and everything, we have to have smart things, technology implemented, people that are trained, aware about all this process. So I will go back from actually Minas to tell us about this one, I mean the feedback, because it's very important how we are connecting the dots between, let's say, cruise, ports and destination. What kind of feedback we are requiring from, let's say, from your customers, for your, actually maybe your procurement, let's say, for everything about sustainability, because this is what we would like to discuss finally at the end of the day. How you are achieving this, actually, this necessity for information?
Actually, we are conducting a survey right now in cooperation with the University of Piraeus to measure the socio-economical impact of the cruise sector, and hopefully if I'm invited next year, I will have much more to say.
Okay. All right. Zelka, I know that you're doing a lot of activities with universities and everything, but tell us 2 or 3
But
examples.
we are well aware that we miss some monitoring tools, and I was really happy when Randy presented today that there is going to be like a measurement tool for assessments and also for cultural attractions, which made me extremely happy because that's something we are missing. I must also stress that throughout the last few years with the pandemics, it was pointless to do any kind of monitoring because we didn't have anything to monitor, to be honest. And it was true, no tourism at all, or very little one. But we, on a regular basis, we do have our e-visitor system, which gives us a number of tourists staying in destination. We do have number of cruise ship passengers arriving in the destination. Throughout that application, we do have a number of buses visiting, etc. So we do have that, but it's not enough, and now we are in the process of preparing a memorandum of understanding or some kind of contract with the University of Dubrovnik, and they will be doing different analysis for us. Among others is the carrying capacity of those Dubrovnik.
So academia is a critical point
Yeah.
here in this discussion.
But I think
So
all of us are
industry-
working more and more with academia to do research, especially in key destinations where we have issues around sustainability, like Barcelona, for example, and places like that. But if I pick up on Shauna's question as well, we do a lot of sentiment research about our customers, and 6 out of 10 cruisers say that by visiting a destination, they are likely to return to that destination for a longer period of time. So it's not an embarkation, but a destination they visit. We also see that by the work we've done through GSTC, now we have some of our brands like TUI are now returning to do turnaround, where people get on and off the cruises in the destination. Dubrovnik will do that next year for the first time. And that gives people the opportunity, and the brands tend to offer stay before you sail or stay after you sail opportunities, and we have a lot of that happening. And we also, 50% of our cruise population comes from North America, where they tend to travel and then will spend more time in the destination when they can, because the cruise is only part of the experience they have. And our brands, we see more and more, are selling more and more extra packages to destinations. So I can't give you specific destinations where that's working, but Dubrovnik is one, obviously. But others are doing that as well. So.
Right, thank you very much, everyone, for your answers to my questions and the questions from the audience. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we should have more time in order to introduce also other stakeholders of this big chain. It's a huge chain, and we haven't had time really to go further to the destination and the stakeholders about, let's say, agro and local products and everything, which is also very big issue about sustainability and cruise. However, I think we touched the heart of many things that are really hot here. Maybe you have realized that there are some very serious steps that have to be done in the future, like an overall, let's say, alliance or something of all these players, because it is a very big game, very important for the destinations. The port's transformation, the whole industry of cruising is transforming itself in something very, very different from what we have in our mind of the last years. And I think the good things are coming. However, we have to keep on the target. And I think finally, tools like GSTC Destination Criteria and destinations that can have this kind of evaluation and using the outcomes in the proper way, like I think Dubrovnik have done, Iraklo is following this, is going to be, and it is already a very, very important, let's say, weapon on this battle, because we have to win this battle. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to be in the future.
And I will say, as the cruise industry, we are committed to the GSTC Destination Criteria. Our experience so far, which is 2 destinations here, but the other ones we're working with as well, is really positive, and we really welcome it. And if you as destinations would like to be involved in that work, please approach us. We are open to doing more. We like to be collaborative, to work with the destination and co-funded with ourselves. We don't like to just do it ourselves. We like it to be a series of partners. So if you want to be involved, either talk to me while I'm here or contact Claire when I go back to the office.